The internet will tell you that 14 trucks were buried in the Bingham Canyon mine collapse. That is wrong. It was 13. It will tell you they were Caterpillar trucks. Also wrong. They were Komatsu 930 ES. And it will tell you the collapse happened without warning. That is the biggest mistake of all, because the warning came. The engineers heard it. They just could not stop what was already in motion. The deepest hole on Earth. The Bingham Canyon mine sits about 30 kilometers southwest of Salt Lake City, Utah. From the air, it looks like someone took a giant drill and pushed it into the earth. It is not a hole, it is more like a bowl. A bowl that is 1.2 kilometers deep and 4 kilometers wide. You could stack 3 Empire State Buildings on top of each other inside it and still not reach the rim. This mine has been running since 1906. In that time, it has produced more copper than any other mine in human history. More than 19 million tons of copper have come out of this one place. That number is hard to understand, so think of it this way. Every copper wire inside every American home built before 1980. A large part of it came from Bingham Canyon. By 2013, the mine was owned by Rio Tinto, one of the largest mining companies in the world. They had invested billions of dollars in equipment, infrastructure, and technology. The mine floor was as busy as a small city. Massive Komatsu 930E haul trucks, each one weighing 250 tons when empty, moved in slow, constant circles. 13 of them were working on the day everything changed. 3 PNH 4100C electric mining shovels, each worth $45 million, were also on site. These are machines the size of apartment buildings. They do not move fast. They are not meant to. They are meant to stay in one place and eat rock. There were also 83,000 gallons of diesel fuel stored at the bottom of the mine. Enough to fill more than 5 standard swimming pools. This was not just a mine. It was a small civilization inside a hole in the earth. The warning nobody could ignore. Here is something you need to understand about open-pit mines. They are not stable. The walls of any open-pit mine are always moving. Slowly, almost invisibly, but always moving. This is normal. Engineers know it. They plan for it. They watch the walls with sensors, GPS monitors, radar systems, and satellite data. The north wall of Bingham Canyon had been moving for years. The geotechnical team at the mine had been tracking it carefully. They had sensors embedded in the rock. They had radar pointed at the slope. Every day, they collected data. Every day, they watched the numbers. In early 2013, those numbers began to change. The north wall was moving faster than it should. Not a lot faster, just enough to notice, just enough to worry. The engineers ran the data through their models. They looked at historical patterns. They compared it to other slope movements at other mines around the world. And then they made a prediction. The north wall of Bingham Canyon, they said, was going to collapse. Not might collapse. Not could collapse. Was going to collapse. They just could not say exactly when. This is the part that makes Bingham Canyon different from almost every other industrial disaster in history. The engineers knew it was coming. They told management. Management listened. And then Rio Tinto did something that almost never happens in the mining industry. They acted on the warning. 11 days before the collapse, they began evacuating equipment from the north end of the mine. They moved workers away from the danger zone. They created exclusion areas. They repositioned machinery to safer parts of the site. Brad Ross had been working at the mine for 6 weeks. He was part of the team monitoring the slope every day. On the morning of April 10, 2013, he and his colleagues were watching the data in real time. The movement rate had increased again overnight. Every hour, the numbers climbed a little higher. They all knew what was coming. They just did not know it was coming today. At exactly 2:38 p.m. on April 10, 2013, Rio Tinto's press team received a single internal notification. It said, "Slide activity in progress at North Wall." By the time that message was read, the north wall of Bingham Canyon was already gone. It started near the top of the slope. A crack, a shift, a rumble that the monitoring equipment caught before any human ear did. Then the entire north face of the mine began to move as one single mass. Not piece by piece. Not section by section. The whole wall, all at once. 165 million tons of rock dropped into the mine floor. To understand what 165 million tons means. The Great Pyramid of Giza weighs about 6 million tons. The Empire State Building weighs about 365,000 tons. The entire amount of material moved during the construction of the Panama Canal. All the rock and dirt dug out over 10 years by thousands of workers. Was around 175 million tons. The Bingham Canyon collapse matched that in less than a minute. The sound was heard as far as Salt Lake City. People in the city felt the ground move under their feet. Some thought it was an earthquake. It was not an earthquake. It was a mountain falling into a hole. Now think about what a Komatsu 930E actually is. It stands 7.3 meters tall. That is taller than a two-story house. Its tires alone are 4 meters high. Bigger than most front doors are wide. Each truck weighs 250 tons when it is completely empty. When it is loaded with rock, it weighs over 500 tons. These are not vehicles. They are moving buildings. On April 10, 2013, 13 of them were on the mine floor. Some were moving. Some were parked. Some had their engines running, headlights on, radios playing. The operators had been pulled out 11 days earlier, so the cabs were empty. But the trucks were still there. Still sitting on the floor of the deepest open-pit copper mine in the world. Still pointing in the directions they had last been driven. The north wall hit them at somewhere between 100 and 150 kilometers per hour. Not one truck moved out of the way. Not one was pushed to the side. They were not knocked over. They were not rolled across the floor. They were swallowed. The wall of rock and debris, traveling faster than a highway car, simply absorbed them. One moment they were there. The next moment they were under 165 million tons of mountain. Today, those 13 trucks are still in the mine. They were never recovered. The cost of digging them out would be more than the cost of buying new ones. So they stayed where they landed. Buried under rock, somewhere beneath the new floor of the mine, perfectly preserved in the dark. The 3 PNH 4100C electric shovels went the same way. $45 million each. $135 million total. Gone in seconds. The 83,000 gallons of diesel fuel stored at the bottom of the mine was sealed under the collapsed debris like a cork in a bottle. It took less than 1 minute. Nobody died. The number that changes everything. 0 fatalities. In a collapse of this scale. The largest non-volcanic landslide in North American history. Not a single person lost their life. This did not happen by accident. It happened because 11 days earlier, engineers made a prediction and management believed them. It happened because Brad Ross and his colleagues sat in a monitoring room watching numbers on a screen and took those numbers seriously. It happened because Rio Tinto had invested in technology that could see the slope moving before any human eye could detect it. The equipment losses were enormous. The 3 shovels alone represented $135 million. The trucks, the infrastructure, the stored fuel, the access roads. The total damage has been estimated at over $700 million. Rio Tinto's share price dropped the same afternoon. The mine, which produces roughly 25% of the United States' domestic copper supply, was going to be offline for months. But everyone went home. The day after the collapse, the chief executive of Rio Tinto Copper sent a message to the entire team. He wrote that this outcome, 0 lives lost, was the result of years of investment in safety systems and a culture where engineers were trusted to make difficult calls. He was right. He was also describing something that is rarer than most people think. What the data was saying. After the collapse, investigators and engineers went back through the monitoring data. They wanted to understand exactly how accurate the prediction had been. The sensors had been tracking the North Wall's movement since 2012. Over the course of that year, the movement rate had been slow but consistent. In early 2013, it began to accelerate. The radar system, a ground-based interferometric radar installed specifically to watch the slope, was recording movements of just a few millimeters per day. But those millimeters were adding up. The geotechnical team had identified a failure surface deep inside the rock mass. Below the visible surface of the slope, there was a weak geological layer. A zone of softer rock that had been there for millions of years. As the mine deepened over the decades, the weight of the walls above had been slowly pressing down on that weak layer. Mining operations had also changed the stress patterns in the rock. Water from snow melt had seeped into cracks and made things worse. The combination of all these factors had been building for years. The sensors had seen it building. The engineers had read what the sensors were saying. The prediction they made was not a guess. It was based on real data from a real monitoring system that had been doing exactly what it was designed to do. The satellite data, radar imagery from space, had also been tracking the slope. Those images showed movement patterns that matched everything the ground sensors were saying. The North Wall was not stable. It had not been stable for a long time. And the data, read correctly, told the full story. The data existed. It was connected to the warning system. And this time, somebody listened. The lesson that did not need to be learned twice. The Bingham Canyon collapse of 2013 is studied in mining schools, in geotechnical engineering programs, and in safety management courses around the world. Not because it was a disaster, but because it was a disaster that should have killed dozens of people, and did not. The lesson is deceptively simple. You need to collect data. You need to have people who can read it. You need to have a culture where those people are heard when they bring bad news. And you need to be willing to lose $700 million worth of equipment rather than ignore a warning. Most organizations fail at step 3 or step 4. They have the data. They sometimes even have the people who can read it. But when someone walks into a meeting and says, "We need to stop," something is wrong. The pressure of schedules and budgets and expectations pushes back. And sometimes, that pressure wins. At Bingham Canyon in 2013, it did not win. The mine was restored over the following months. Equipment was replaced. Access roads were rebuilt. New monitoring systems were installed with even greater sensitivity than before. By 2014, copper was moving out of the mine again. The North Wall still stands. It is different now, reshaped by the collapse, monitored more closely than ever. Every day, sensors watch it move. Every day, engineers read the data. Every day, they make sure the warning system is connected to the people who can act on it. That is not a complicated system. It is just a difficult one to build and an even harder one to maintain. Bingham Canyon is proof that it can be done. And somewhere in that monitoring room, the screens are still watching. The numbers are still coming in. And the story is not over.